January 2010. He finds an abandoned barn on a 40-acre farm outside Trois-Rivières. He pays it in cash and registers the property under a fake name. Inside, Frank has constructed a counterfeiting operation sophisticated enough to rival a government mint. The centerpiece was a 4-color Heidelberg offset press, the same type used by legitimate currency printers worldwide. Frank bought it secondhand from a bankrupt print shop for $125,000 cash. It weighed 6 tons. Moving it required a flatbed truck, a rented crane, and 4 men who thought they were relocating equipment for a packaging company. Alongside the Heidelberg, Frank installed industrial dryers, precision cutting machines, UV curing stations, and a custom stamping apparatus for applying color-shifting foil. He sourced specialty inks from suppliers across 3 continents, color-shifting metallics, UV reactive compounds, the exact gray-green formulation used by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. The total investment was just $300,000. He was all in. Every dollar he'd ever made, stolen, or borrowed was now sitting in a barn in rural Quebec. If this worked, he'd print a fortune. If it failed, he'd lose everything and probably his freedom. But Frank still had a problem. He could buy equipment, but he couldn't operate it. Offset printing at this level requires years of training. The color calibration alone takes months to master. One wrong setting and the output looks obviously fake. So Frank did what he always did. He found someone who could be bought. Through underworld connections, he recruited a skilled press operator, a man who'd run a legitimate print shop before serving time for an unrelated crime. This man would become Frank's technical director, teaching him everything about ink density, plate alignment, and the 1,000 small details that separate amateur counterfeits from supernotes. The first test runs were disasters. Colors too saturated. Registration off by fractions of a millimeter. Security features misaligned. Frank burned every failed sheet and started over. For 3 months, he printed nothing but garbage. $300,000 invested, and he couldn't produce a single usable bill. The pressure was crushing. Every day the operation continued was another day someone might notice, a neighbor asking too many questions, a supplier getting suspicious, a random traffic stop that led somewhere it shouldn't. Frank was bleeding money he didn't have, waiting for a breakthrough that might never come. Then, in April 2010, the Heidelberg produced its first perfect $20 bill. Frank held it next to a genuine note. He couldn't tell the difference. Neither could the UV lamp, the iodine pen, or the magnifying loupe he used to check the microprinting. The watermark was flawless. The color-shifting ink transitioned from copper to green at exactly the right angle. The paper snapped correctly. The weight was identical. He ran it through every detection test he could find. It passed them all. By December 2010, Frank has printed 12.5 million counterfeit 20s, $250 million face value. The bills fill 47 wooden crates stacked in a secondary barn on the same property. It's more fake American currency than the Secret Service has seized in any single operation in the agency's 155-year history. But the most important thing in the operation is that Frank didn't spend his counterfeits. He sold them. This is the difference between amateur counterfeiters and professionals. Amateurs pass fake bills one at a time, $20 at a gas station, $50 at a restaurant, and get caught within weeks because cameras, witnesses, and serial number tracking create an evidence trail. Professionals become wholesalers. They sell bulk counterfeit to criminal organizations at a steep discount, let someone else take the distribution risk, and collect clean money in return. Frank's rate, 30 cents on the dollar. For every $1 million in fake 20s, he charged $300,000 in real currency. Given the extraordinary quality of his product, buyers lined up. He sold through a single trusted middleman to organized crime contacts in 3 countries. The rules were strict. No distribution in Canada, nothing in the northeastern United States, and the bills had to enter circulation overseas first, Europe, Asia, anywhere that would delay pattern detection. A fake $20 spent in Prague creates no investigative thread leading back to Quebec. Between 2010 and 2012, Frank moves approximately $50 million in counterfeit currency. His cut, $15 million in legitimate cash, flows into offshore accounts in Panama and the Cayman Islands. He buys nothing flashy. He maintains his same apartment, drives the same truck. The only visible change in his lifestyle is that he stopped selling marijuana. Why risk a drug charge when you're sitting on millions? But here's what Frank didn't know. In March 2012, a bank teller in Las Vegas noticed something strange. 11 $20 bills in a single deposit had identical serial numbers. Not Frank's bills. He never duplicated. Someone in his distribution chain had been running their own copies from his originals, and they'd made the one mistake Frank had spent years avoiding. The Secret Service opened a formal investigation. They called it Operation Sunset. Initially, analysts suspected a foreign government operation, North Korea perhaps, or Iran. The quality of the bills was too high for any known criminal enterprise. These weren't basement fakes. They were supernotes, the kind of counterfeits that required state resources to produce. But then, Canadian authorities seized a batch of identical 20s in a drug raid near Montreal. The connection to a known mob associate pointed the investigation north. Quietly, the Secret Service established a joint task force with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They began tracking distribution patterns, flipping low-level couriers, mapping the money's path backward toward its source. By late 2012, they knew a major counterfeiting operation was running somewhere in Quebec. They knew it was producing millions in fake US 20s. They just didn't know exactly where or who was behind it. And one of Frank's 3 wholesale buyers had just been arrested on unrelated charges. The price of his freedom? Delivering the source of the supernotes. How does the Secret Service identify Frank's barn without ever seeing a single piece of physical evidence? And what does Frank possess that will later force the US government to abandon the largest counterfeiting prosecution in American history?